This episode is brought to you by Vital Farms. Isn't it bullshit to have to question where your food comes from? At Vital Farms, you can trace your pasture-raised eggs all the way back to the source, the pasture. On the side of each pasture-raised carton of eggs, you'll find the name of the farm where your eggs were laid. And when you look the farm up on their website, you'll get a peek at all the sunshine, fresh air, and open space the hens enjoy. Learn more and find out where to buy them at vitalfarms.com. Vital Farms, keeping it bullshit-free.
This episode is brought to you by Klaviyo, the platform that powers smarter digital relationships. With Klaviyo, you can activate all your customer data in real time, connect seamlessly with your customers across all channels, guide your marketing strategy with AI-powered insights, recommendations, and automated assistance, deliver experiences that feel individually designed at scale, and grow your business faster. Power smarter digital relationships with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com/Spotify. That's KLAVIYO.com/Spotify.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Welcome to the podcast. In this podcast episode, I talk with Dr. Benjamin Ritter about self-leadership and the difference between a job and a career. Dr. Benjamin Ritter, welcome to the conversation today.
I am very excited, like beyond excited. I'm wondrously exuberant. I can't think of some adjectives, but I'm very happy to be here.
Pleasure to be with you again. You're joining us from Texas. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. We had a nice conversation. We were trying to think in the pre-interview, we were talking, when was that? I would have to go look it up exactly, but it was probably a year or two ago. You were a guest on the podcast. We had a really great conversation then. It's really great to reconnect and to have an opportunity to further explore some really important issues. Today, we're going to be talking about self-leadership, the importance of self-leadership generally, but also how that applies to the concepts of job and career, and really what the difference is between how we can and probably should be looking at job versus career, and the role of self-leadership in all of that. As we get started, I wanted to share Ben's bio with everybody. Dr. Benjamin Ritter, founder of Live For Yourself Consulting, is a leadership and career coach, talent development executive, and values geek. He's an international speaker, online instructor, and he does so many really cool things. I'm just looking through this. So many wonderful clients. Ben, anything you would like to specifically highlight from your own background or personal context before we dive on into the broader conversation?
Just that I didn't start in talent development or leader and career coaching. My career right before this was in healthcare for 7 years, being really unhappy at work. I was coaching at the time. I was an entrepreneur. I've launched the supplement. I launched a different coaching practice a long time ago. As a marketing associate, I was in health policy. I've done so many different odd jobs. And the reason why I mentioned that is because I speak from a perspective of not this is the way that your next job should be or your career overall should be, but that it literally is limitless in the amount of doors that you can open. And I've opened many of them. I've been in many different places in my career, multiple pivots, multiple disappointments, and worked with clients all around the globe in different industries. And so what I'm sharing with you is based on not just the research, not just the book knowledge, not just from the limited experience working with clients, and not just my own personal experience, but like the gamut of careers and jobs that are potentially possible. So listen in, and if my background doesn't align with what you've done, I promise you I might have actually done what you're doing, but also that I have some knowledge and expertise in it.
I think we can all resonate with this idea of just kind of a meandering path. I think very few people really just kind of know from the get-go what they're going to be doing. They kind of get in their lane and they stick with it. I happen to be married to one of those people. She knew from the time she was in high school that she wanted to be a math teacher. She's taught math in different settings. She's tutored, she's taught in middle school. She's actually a university professor now, but she's always taught math, and she always knew that's what she wanted to do. That's wonderful. That's not how it goes for most of us. I know that's certainly not how it went for me. I've been meandering all over the place. So anyways, I think we can all resonate with that. And it's not really about how straight and linear your path is. It's just about growth and what you gain from the various experiences that you have. And I actually think that leads really well in to the broader conversation we're going to be having today. Let's start by laying a foundation for this idea of self-leadership. What do you mean by self-leadership, and why is it important today, perhaps as important as ever?
So self-leadership is basically, it revolves around the concept that the most important leader in your life is you. You're ultimately, no matter who's around you or who you look up to, whoever your role models are, your leaders are, you're ultimately making the decision. And so self-leadership takes the accountability about your decision-making, puts it on you, and then empowers you to say, well, what is it that you want to create? And are you leading yourself intentionally towards it? Very similar to like a value-aligned life, but taking away some of those kind of big hokey pokey words and just saying like, you make the decision and you lead yourself forwards. And so self-leadership is, are you aware of the decisions you're making, and do they align with what you want to create in your world?
An aspect of that just kind of stuck out in my mind. You didn't say it explicitly, but to me, part of what you were saying in self-leadership is just ownership over our own choices, ownership over our own life and our own trajectory, recognizing very, very much that, external forces do impact us. We're all stuck within a context, and we all have to function within a particular context, and there are constraints. But we largely get to decide how we're going to respond to those constraints, which is a powerful kind of freeing mindset in and of itself. And as I get beyond that, then I start to think about how I can't outsource my responsibility. I can't outsource my decision making to other people, to other institutions. While there is plenty of blame to go around for faulty systems and institutions and people doing bad things, ultimately, I have to choose how I'm going to respond within the context I find myself, and I have to own what I'm doing and what I'm choosing and how I'm reacting, right? And to me, that's just a huge part of what self-leadership is all about, and not falling into the trap that I think it's just human nature and it's very common, but we especially when things are hard, that you start to look around, you start to point fingers, you start to complain about the things that aren't the way they should be or that you would hope they would be. And while we can't put our head in the sand and we can't ignore faulty systems, and we need to work to try to drive social change and organizational change and such, we also have to realize that within our own sphere of influence, we have the capability right here, right now, to lead out in what we're doing. Again, to me, that's a very freeing kind of a mindset.
Yeah, and it's easier to say for people that are used to it. Generally, what tends to hold people back is either a lack of clarity on what they want to achieve or a lack of belief that they can achieve it. And so fear can really hold individuals back in this regard. If it was as simple as saying, yeah, I'm my own leader, we would all be probably pretty content with what we've been creating, or at least have a community around us and a job that we're working in that aligns with who we are at our core. But so not knowing who you are, not knowing what you want, and not believing that you're able to get it, so living in a state of fear tends to hold us back. And that fear creates beliefs such as, I can't say that to my boss, I can't reach out to that person, I can't apply to that job, I can't pivot industries. And what's so neat about, though, developing like the ability to lead yourself, so having the clarity, having the confidence in yourself, and then knowing how to control your environment to the best way that you can, is once you learn how to do it, the momentum that you can create is unreal. And I have a couple examples of my recent life. I almost like to think of it as a tree. A tree grows. It's like the foundation, your values, your goals, who you are at your core, they become your trunk. And then as you grow, as you get older, if you look up, you see these branches springing out to gather more and more light. Those branches are your interests. Those branches are your goals that come from your actual core values. And if your decisions align with that trunk, then they're going to be really strong branches. If they don't, they'll be brittle, they'll grow the wrong way, they'll snap off, and you will not be a healthy tree overall. It will affect the overall trunk, etc.
Yeah, that's a great example. Bringing it back to this idea of just knowing ourselves, knowing our core values, our priorities as a starting point to self-leadership is really, really important. And you're right, it's easy to talk about it. It's easy to kind of just generally talk in platitudes about these principles. It's much harder to do the work and do it consistently enough that you're in tune enough with yourself, your driving motives, those values and priorities, so that you can start to move forward in a self-leadership fashion. And that's why, career coaches and executive coaches like yourself have jobs, because it's just a very important thing that even super talented, super capable, brilliant people still need help navigating that and figuring out how to do it. And it just all starts with being willing to pause, take a step back, be self-reflective, and be honest enough with yourself. Are you capable of doing that yourself, or do you need to bring in somebody? Do you need to, maybe it's therapy, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's whatever, a mentor or your personal advisory board. But think about what you're going to need to help unmoor yourself so that you can launch into this space of self-leadership. If you find yourself being held back by limiting beliefs or traumas or whatever else might be in play. So let's dive on in now and talk a little bit more specifically about, you already referred to it briefly, but let's talk more specifically now about the difference between job and career. I think this is particularly important because we're in an age of disruption. We have socioeconomic disruption, geopolitical disruption. We have institutional disruptions. We have technological disruptions. Like, the pace and rate of change is just ramping up, and we're all dealing with it constantly. And if we hone in just briefly on just the shifting nature of work in relation to technological disruptions and innovations, we just know work today is quite a bit different than it was even a few years ago. And in 5 or 10 years from now, it's going to be even more dramatically different, probably. And so this idea of the distinction between job versus career, and what that means for us as we're leading out kind of our own path, whether it's a linear path or a meandering path, like we discussed, it's really important. So can you unpack that for us? What do you mean more specifically by job versus career? And let's explore what that means in the future of work.
Well, just going back to the example that I had about that tree, your career can be a trunk and your jobs can be the branches, and the culmination of your jobs make up your career. And honestly, to be able to predict what your last job is going to be within your career is, I would imagine, incredibly difficult. I can say what I care about now and what skills I want to practice and the things I want to learn, but fast forward 20, 30, 40 years, I'm not sure where that's going to lead me. I mean, if you don't believe that, just try to look back 5 or 10 years and see where you were and ask yourself if you could imagine where you are today. The majority of people would say no. But what's really neat about this concept that your jobs are a culmination that turn into your career is that the amount of importance that you place on your current job, or having your job be your career, can be really actually misleading and a mistake. Honestly, I'll say the word, a mistake. I usually don't say that very often. But a job is just it's a drop in time when you look at your broader career overall. It is something for you to create joy from. It's something for you to build a community and relationships from. It's something for you to learn skills and try things out. It's something that potentially you can feel safe failing in, because there's another job right around the corner. Now, getting that next job will entail you being able to tell a career story that will be built from your experiences. You actually don't have to have a career story until you need to make a move into your next job. But what's beautiful, again, about this is that you can always get another job, and a singular job is actually not that important in the grand scheme of your career. and you can change your career story to fit the next job you're going to get. And so if we can take the emphasis away from what is my next job or what is my job giving and bringing for me, and instead say, how can I see this job as a tool? Then we create a more positive framework around disappointments that might happen, as well as changes that might happen, as well as anything that might happen from the day-to-day perspective if we were to zoom out.
Yeah, I think that's super important to maintain that perspective. And especially when you have career setbacks, when you have you get passed over for that promotion, you're trying for this new like perfect job, like it's your ideal company, your ideal position, you're super excited for it, and you don't even get an interview. Like these types of things can be devastating. They can really set you back. And I've been there. I've had those sorts of disappointments. I think everyone has. And it's really nice to be able to, again, take a step back, see the bigger picture, and recognize that this is just part of your story. And it even though it seems all encompassing in the moment, that within the context of a broader career and just time, the sting of it will fade. And frankly, oftentimes you might find yourself in a better place a few years later than you would have even conceived of had you gone that path and gotten that job or that promotion where you were. I know that certainly has been the case for me, where I've had some devastating disappointments. I had my plan. I had my year plan, my 5-year plan. I was working hard. I was going at it. I was achieving, I was accomplishing. I was in my mind, I'm like, I'm the ideal candidate for this kind of a position. And it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't work out. And I'm devastated. But guess what? Fast forward 5 years, and I find myself in a better place than I would have been had I gone down that path. And I'm super grateful for it. And so I try to remind myself when I'm in those moments of devastation, despair, frustration, whatever word you want to use, like just remember, John, that this may be a blessing in disguise. And just remember that this isn't closing the door permanently. This is just a minor immediate setback, and you can learn from it, you can grow from it, and there's so many other possibilities out there. The other thing that I just think is so important in all of this is, because of the rate and pace of change, because the nature of work is shifting dramatically, the reality is we all are going to be doing things probably in 5 or 10 years that at this moment, sitting right here, having this conversation or listening to this episode, like we can't even think about, we can't even conceive of. It hasn't been invented yet. It hasn't been even thought of yet, right? And so we're all probably going to be experiencing those things. And again, if we can, that can be super scary, but it can also be really relieving and empowering, and it can take the pressure off of feeling like everything rides on this presentation today. Everything rides on, this, do I land this client? Well, it may be important, but at the end of the day, no, not everything rides on it. And things are changing dramatically anyways. And what matters more is that we're learning from these experiences, that we're willing to grow, adapt, pivot, and lean into the next opportunity.
Mm-hmm. A couple of points that I feel like are really important to make from what we're just saying now. And by the way, if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, this applies to you too. I work with clients that have their own service-based businesses. I work with CEOs whose businesses are failing. And you have to believe that if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be an entrepreneur. And even if you're a successful entrepreneur, you're probably going to then create another company. The thing you're doing now is not going to be the thing you're doing tomorrow. And tomorrow can be a 5, 10, 20-year mark. It's important to remember that, because then it allows us to disconnect how we use what we're doing today to define who we are. And so when it comes to believing in ourselves and in terms of stress level that attached to a specific presentation or project or a moment in time, we can detach from that a little bit too. Because no matter what, everything can always be a blessing in disguise. No matter what happens in your life, you're the author of your story and how you perceive the things that have happened to you. And so you have a choice to say, this helped me get to where I am today, or I really wish I was back in the past. And I really don't know that many people that have a proactive, positive, solution-oriented, self-leadership mindset that have ever said, I wish I could go back to this point in time because they've used what have happened. They've used the things that have happened to them to benefit their current state and to help lead them forwards into their future. And especially, you were bringing up this topic of it has to be this job, this presentation is so important. It has to be this client. What people miss out when they get so invested in one specific opportunity, other than the fact they tend to just put way too much level. I was working with someone the other day who waited about 3.5 weeks to apply to a position, and it was taken down the day before he applied.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I kept saying, I'm like, and I wasn't directly working with him as a client, I was just kind of coaching him, helping him out in a way. I'm like, you need to do it yesterday. You need to do it yesterday. You need to, and all of a sudden he was prepped, he was ready to go, and he was ready to apply, and then it was gone. Luckily, I built a relationship with the director of the organization that they were still able to bring him in. But you see this happen all the time. We wait until we think we're ready for something, and when we're ready, it's too late. What's so important about the things that you love in life that you become attached to is they become a template for other things that exist in this world that you might be interested in. Like, for example, you're not interested in that company. You're interested in companies like that. That job isn't perfect for you. Jobs similar to that would be a good next step in your career for a job. And I think it's really important that we take away this idea of that's my puzzle piece, that's the perfect thing for me, and instead say, what can I learn about myself because of that thing? So then I want to integrate into my community, this is control, to then build an environment or a job and eventually a longer term career or multitude of jobs to have these experiences.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing because and society tends to kind of tell us something differently, doesn't it? And we get we get kind of alternative messages from media, TV shows, movies all the time. The most compelling TV shows tend to be the ones where everything is high stakes, everything matters, and everyone's life depends on this moment in time. Careers depend on this moment in time. And I don't think we're suggesting that you don't take work assignments seriously or that you don't try to do your best or anything like that. Of course you do. But high stakes environments with high levels of stress and anxiety usually don't produce your best work. And so if you're artificially amping up the anxiety around what you're trying to do, you're doing yourself a disservice. Frankly, you're not going to do as well. And so it's a bit of a downward spiral of negative self-fulfilling prophecy if you find yourself in that trap. And so just easing up, lowering the stakes, keeping a broader perspective on things, you probably are going to do better in those moments anyways. And if not, for whatever reason, if things just don't go well or they don't go your way, guess what? One door closes, another door opens. You want to name whatever cliche you want to say. They're platitudes, but they're true. If you can maintain the mindset to learn from the setback that may have happened. And if it wasn't a setback and it was a success, gain momentum, build off of it. And you can go from there. Well, Ben, I note the time. I need to let you go here in just a minute. But before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, please go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com to get a free download on some secrets to creating a meaningful career. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Let me know that you heard me on this show. I'd love to continue the conversation and just welcome you to my network. I post things related to leadership and career and personal development pretty regularly. I'm not sure how LinkedIn decides it, but I've been designated a top voice in career development and executive coaching. So that's always fun. And hopefully you enjoy some of that content, share with some friends. And just in general, I think we heavily limit ourselves. And you have to ask, am I the ball and chain right now? Or am I the wings? And if you're interested in it, like, for example, if you're interested in a specific industry, are you going to a conference in that industry? Have you started making connections and networking within the industry? Or are you scared to even apply to a job that you see online? And you just have to ask yourself, am I leading myself forwards no matter what? Or am I closing the doors and sitting in the room afraid, not believing myself? And I know the way that I want to choose to live, and hopefully you pick being your own self-leader too.
Yeah. And maybe it's not the healthiest thing, but I can't help but ask myself the question, what's the worst thing that can happen if I do this? If I go out on a limb, if I extend myself in this way, I'm uncomfortable. Yes. I could be I could not be considered. Yes. Someone could make fun of me. Like there's lots of things that could happen, but what's really the worst thing that can happen? It's usually not that bad. and so just like lower the stakes in terms of like the fear of what you have associated with whatever this thing is that you're hesitant to try. Don't allow that fear to dictate, and just try things, experiment. And that's a fun life to live, I think. Well, Ben, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Ben can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.